Hi everyone, welcome to the Max Adventure Tour du Mont Blanc webinar. If you're tuned in, you've probably booked one of our Tour du Mont Blanc trips for this year, which is great news. And we hope that this will answer any questions that you may have at this stage. You can also send us in any questions that you have, so just type into the comments bar and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So yeah, let's get started with the presentation. Okay, so this is just a wee recap about what we're going to talk about today. So we'll start with early season conditions. We'll then go on to the early season shuttle information. Then my colleague Minna is going to talk a bit about preparation. And then at the end, we'll cover the questions. So yeah, a wee introduction about who we are. My name is Sarah and I'm the Tour Development Manager for Tour du Mont Blanc. I was lucky enough to do the highlights version of the trip last year and I had a great time. It was one of my favourite trips and I'm actually quite jealous that you're all about to head out and have a great adventure.
Right. Hi, I'm Minna. I've hopefully spoken to some of you. I am sort of a destination and adventure specialist at Max and specialize in our alpine trips, in particular the TMB. So hopefully some of you will be receiving emails from me and phone calls. And they'll continue as you almost head out.
Okay, so let's start with the early season conditions. So most of you will have heard by now that the Alps, and in fact Europe in general, have had quite a bumper winter. In fact, the ski season in France was extended till pretty much the end of April, which is fantastic if you love skiing, but it's quite problematic for our early season departures on the Tour du Mont Blanc because there's still quite a bit of snow on the very high passes. I should just point out just now that if you're traveling later in the season, that this message is probably going to change as the weather changes. So if you're departing after the 5th of July, we're actually having another webinar then, which will have a more up-to-date summary of the weather. So please tune into that if you're departing after the 5th of July. So here on the slide, you can see various links, and these will be made available in the recorded version of this. And these are basically really good resources where you can check current weather conditions, and I recommend that you check these before you go out and periodically throughout your trip as well. If you don't have internet access, another great tip is to check with your accommodation providers. They're all really knowledgeable about local weather conditions, and usually they have a notice board where they tell you what the weather's going to be like the next day. So always check before you head out onto your day's walk. Okay, so the first Max Adventure walking day isn't actually until the 14th of June. So this is still 2 weeks away. So unfortunately, we can't tell you just now what the weather conditions are going to be like then. But we can tell you what's happening now and how this affects the trail conditions. So as you can see from this slide here, conditions now are stormy, but the temperatures are looking good. So between about 1,000 and 2,500 meters above sea level, which is what concerns us, you can see that the temperatures are consistently above freezing. So that means that the snow is melting, which is good news for us. And here we have a couple of pictures from webcams that we took this morning. So here we have a webcam picture from Val Ferry, which is near Courmayeur on the Italian side of Mont Blanc. So this one here is about 1,600 meters above sea level, and you can see that the snow has cleared up quite nicely. I checked this just a couple of weeks ago and there was just snow, so this is really great. And then we have the Col de la Bam, which is one of the passes on the Tour du Mont Blanc. This is just over 2,000 meters above sea level, and you can see again the snow is clearing up quite nicely. And then we have La Flégère, which is near Chamonix, and this is about 2,000 meters above sea level as well. So although the snow is melting, the problem lies more in the fact that there was so much snow to begin with. So it is melting, but it's just going to take a bit longer than usual because of the sheer volume of the snow that's sitting on the passes. So we're fairly certain that these 3 areas that you can see on the screen here are what are going to be most affected and are probably going to be unwalkable for the first few weeks of the season, maybe longer. We're not sure yet. So we have Col de la Croix de Bonhomme, which is at 2,400 meters, and that's on the day between Les Contamines and Les Chapieux. We also have Col de la Seine at 2,500 meters, which is on the day between Les Chapieux to Courmayeur or Refugio Elisabetta, depending on your itinerary. And then we have Grand Col Ferret at 2,500 meters, and that's between Courmayeur or Benatti to La Folie. So we have sent an email out about this to everyone traveling until mid-July, but we'll go over it again now just to clarify everything. So because these 3 passes are probably going to be most problematic, we have decided to operate transfers in these days as far into the season as necessary.
Also, the good news is I'll actually be on the ground there helping out for the first sort of the early departures. So if you do have any questions, I'll actually be there just helping out.
Yeah. So yeah, what does this mean basically for you? So not to worry, your trip can still go ahead as planned. You are unlikely to be able to walk the higher passes. There will be some remaining snow even at lower altitudes. However, we're pretty sure these are going to be walkable. And we're currently working on arranging transfers for these 3 sections that we've already talked about. These transfers will be free of charge, and we will give you all the relevant information before you head off. And like Minna said, she's going to be on the ground for at least the first 2 weeks of the season, just to help oversee everything and just to be a friendly face that you can ask questions. We also have contact numbers, and you have all that information, so we're always contactable. We'll also be providing you with details of additional walks that you can do on the days that you're getting transferred. Obviously, you're in one of the best walking destinations in the world, and just because you can't walk that particular part of the TMB doesn't mean you can't do another walk. So we'll give you all this information, and you can do the walks either before or after your transfer. It depends on your itinerary, but we'll be giving you all that information as well very soon. I should probably state just now that if you're considering walking the passes that we are advising against, you should only be doing this if you are an experienced and confident winter mountaineer. You'll likely need crampons and an ice axe, and most importantly, you'll need to know how to use them. So even if you do have the equipment and the experience to do this, you still have to make a risk assessment before you cross any significant snowfields. And if you're ever in any doubt, then always descend and take public transport, or we can arrange you a transfer to get to your next accommodation. Okay, so just talking about equipment, walking poles are absolutely essential for early season departures. This will just help you keep your balance if you're walking over any snow. It'll also help you judge the snow. You can see how deep it is. And in general, for the entire season, they're just really great at helping you with any steep descents, just taking a bit of the strain off of your knees. You probably won't require crampons for low-level snowfields, but if you do have them and are confident using them, there's no harm in taking them. If you don't need them, you can just put them in your bag that gets transferred between accommodations. If you don't have crampons, you might want to consider taking shoe spikes, which are much smaller, easier to use, and just don't take up as much space. These will basically just give you a bit more grip on your standard sort of walking boot, and they can be purchased easily online or in any kind of outdoor shop. Again, just to come back to this point, even with all the proper equipment, the most important thing to remember is to know your own limits. So if something doesn't feel right to you, just retreat and reassess the situation. If you're ever in doubt about how to proceed, you can give us a call. But ultimately, it's a self-guided trip, and you know your limits best. So just keep that in mind. On the slide here, you'll see a link to our Tour du Mont Blanc latest updates blog page. And we'll be updating this with the most recent trail conditions as the season progresses. So keep an eye on that. And we'll also be in touch with clients individually, probably next week sometime, just to let the early departures know exactly how their itinerary is affected by the transfers, just so there's no confusion. You know exactly what days you're getting transferred and you're comfortable with all the additional information.
Perfect. Now you guys are on to me. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, what is a self-guided adventure? So as you'll know, the TMB is self-guided. So what that means is we provide you with your accommodations, your baggage transfers, your info pack, which includes your maps, your route notes, but it is up to yourself to get your way from point A to point B. I think it's a really great way to see the area just because you really still have a sense of adventure. You can sort of go at your own pace. You can walk with people you want to walk with. I think that it really makes it your own. And because the TMB is such a well-marked path, you'll not get lost at all. And now we have the handy dandy app, which will help you guide you on your way as well. So just to make sure, so what you receive in the information pack prior to your departure, as you see on the picture there, you receive the Tour du Mont Blanc book. You receive some maps as well, some general sort of information about the region, your accommodation list. Also, quite importantly, the bad weather and alternative transport guide, which will guide you towards buses, trains, gondolas, sort of ways to make your walking day shorter if needed. You also get luggage labels and just in general shuttle information as well.
I'll just add here that we're working just now on an additional information pack for the early season departures, which will have all the information about these additional shuttles, about the alternative walks. It will have Minna's contact details as well, and just a recap of all the information you need so you have it in one handy place. So we're working on that just now. It should be ready next week.
Perfect, and this is what, if you haven't downloaded the app yet, I would highly recommend downloading the app. It kind of works as Google Maps would work. You see a line and you see yourself as a red dot and you can follow it. Depending on the variations that you choose in each walking day, you can download it accordingly. All of this can also be decided on the day so you don't feel pressured to make a decision before you leave, because if you're walking in bad weather, you don't want to walk the hardest walk on the trail. So I would recommend you downloading all the different variations and just having them on hand. This also works on an offline sort of plane mode, so you won't be using any of your internet, but I would recommend downloading it when you do have internet at home. And then you can ask us if you have any questions before you head out, and I'm happy to sort of talk through any of them with you. Perfect, just sort of some general information as well about sort of the little extras that we arrange for you. We arrange baggage transfer. The bags are a maximum of 15 kilos. If you do have bags that are overweight, please do tell us, because the baggage transfer company does need to know this. We kind of recommend, you can take a suitcase, you can take a backpack, as long as it's sealable. Please no plastic bags where stuff can fall out of it. So just sort of your standard suitcase or backpack. You leave them at the reception of your hotel or hut at 8 a.m. and then they get delivered to you by 5 in the evening. I would like to note that not all the huts have baggage transfer. So if you are staying in Lac Blanc, Elisabetta, or Bonatti, there are no baggage transfers there because those huts are so remote. These huts aren't on all itineraries, so don't worry if you're doing one of the shorter trips. It may potentially not be on there. All of these details are in your information pack if you are staying in a hut that doesn't have baggage transfer. If you're staying in a hut that doesn't have baggage transfer, this means that you'll have to carry your overnight things. So, think your toothbrush, something to sleep in, maybe an extra t-shirt for the next day. The good thing about the TMB is everything's really casual. So you really don't need to bring, everyone's gonna be out there walking, so you don't need to bring, your fancy summer dress or heels or anything like that. Everyone will be in a similar state as yourself, after having just walked some of the most iconic walks in the TMB. We can store baggage for you if this is part of a bigger trip for you, and you're traveling around Europe and you have a little bit more than 15 kilos. We can store the bags for you and move them from Les Houches to Chamonix. So they'll be there waiting for you at the end if you don't need all those things in your bags. Also, for your arrival and departure, we recommend using a shuttle just because it's so much quicker and it costs about the same as using public transport. So if you want us to arrange a shuttle for you, we will happily do that. It's to and from Geneva Airport, and it's done with mountain drop-offs, and they'll send you a text the night before just confirming everything. So if you are interested in a shuttle as well and you haven't arranged one yet, just give us a shout and we can arrange it for you. So on to getting excited about the trip. What do I pack? I don't know. So ideally, bag size, I'd say don't go too big. You are carrying this. I think that it's good to have space in your bag for your waterproofs, maybe an extra layer. Of course, your packed lunch, but it doesn't need to be massive. You don't need to carry a whole life in that backpack. And think you have to be carrying it as well. So you have to be comfortable walking, multiple kilometers, miles with this on your bag every day on your back.
Last year when I walked it, my backpack was 30 litres, and that was perfect. Enough space to carry your waterproofs and a warm layer, but also water, lots of water, especially if it's going to be hot, and your food for the day as well. So I would say between 20 and 30 litres is ideal.
Yeah, I think also further on, on your shoes, definitely walking boots, and you need as much ankle support as possible. You're doing some big ascents and descents each day. So if you haven't already invested in a good pair of boots, I would definitely recommend doing that. Also, clothing-wise, bring lots of layers. The weather in the mountains can change really quickly. So you can have a lovely 25-degree weather day, and then in the evening it drops down to 8 degrees. So bring layers so you can take them off and build them up again if needed. If you are for the nights in mountain huts, we would recommend taking a small travel towel with, just because you don't need a big towel, and the hotels will have everything a standard hotel would have, but the mountain huts are a little bit more basic, so we do recommend bringing a little bit of travel towel. Also, if you are staying in dorm rooms in the huts, we would recommend bringing a silk sleeping bag liner, just because they do have plenty of blankets and pillows in the huts, but sometimes it's nice to have something that's yours, in between you and the blankets. Also, just sort of it's very good to bring a first aid kit with, or a blisters kit as well, because you never really know what happens. You stumble, you scrap up your arm. It's good to have a Band-Aid with you when in need. Also, on a slightly different note, some chocolate as well, because if something happens, you want chocolate. Walking poles as well. Walking poles, waterproof sunscreen, pretty much what you would expect on your standard long distance walk. Just come prepared. Also, travel insurance. We do highly recommend you to get travel insurance. We don't supply this ourselves. I know that for our American customers and our British customers, we recommend different companies. So if you do have any questions, just again, get in touch with us and I'll happily sort of point you in the right direction. Make sure as well that the travel insurance covers you over 2,600 meters. Most sort of generic travel insurances do this. It's just in case something does happen on the hill and a helicopter gets called out, that's a really expensive bill to come home with. So please purchase travel insurance. Regarding the currency, so the majority of your trip is in France and Italy, which both have the euro. So that's quite convenient, but you, depending on itinerary, are in Switzerland for a couple of days. So therefore, I would recommend either letting out some Swiss francs when you're in Geneva Airport. There's a cash machine there that dispenses euros and francs. You are, on some itineraries, you could be using some of the buses in Switzerland. And for that, I would recommend having francs. They do not accept card, but they can break a small note. They probably won't break, an 100, but, or even some coins. That's always really helpful. So I'd say bring some change with. unfortunately, not everything's running on card. So yeah, bring plenty of cash.
Especially in the huts, they do not accept cards, so always make sure you have enough cash with you.
Saying that though, I mean, you probably will be fine with about 30 euros a day. You don't need to be, carrying tons, but just enough to, make sure you can get yourself a beer, a nice glass of wine, a chocolate bar, because the huts do have dinners included. But, if you want anything extra, it isn't. So, yeah, just bring some cash. And then, so your preparation for the trip, I mean, so I'm assuming some of you are heading out in the next month, if not sooner. So I hope you've been walking plenty. In the end, I think this it's tough, but it's doable. And whenever, you all are feeling that you can't do it, you can sit down, have a piece of chocolate, look at the view and think, actually, this is fantastic. But of course, the more you train, the more you'll enjoy it, because the fitter you are, the more you can just sit back and take in the view and just really enjoy the TMB. We always recommend as well, go your own pace. This is why you're on a self-guided trip, so you can choose what pace you're going at. So if you're going a little slower or a little faster, just go with it. But also look after yourself. There are some big ascents and descents that do put a lot of strain on your knees and your ankles. So don't push yourself too hard. If you aren't feeling well, then there's no harm in saying, I can't do this, and spending some lovely days in Vermeer or Chamonix. Because in the end, it is your holiday, you want to enjoy it. So you are quite high up, so you may feel a little bit altitude. This isn't high enough, though, to actually, give you altitude sickness, but you might, for the first couple of days, feel like you're getting out of breath a little bit quicker than usual. However, it usually subsides quite quickly, so you don't need to get any kind of special altitude sickness medication. If you are on any other types of medication, we do recommend you taking that within your day pack, just because, our baggage transfer company is great, but there's nothing worse than, needing something and it not being readily available. And in the end, also, talk to your doctor if you're concerned. If any of this is starting to worry you, then please seek medical advice. Yeah. Great. Furthermore, let's see here. So travel. It really depends on where you're traveling from. I know most people fly into Geneva, but you may be traveling from Italy or through Switzerland. So you can check the Swiss Rail website, svb.ch. It has all the kind of up-to-date train information for you, which is really handy as well.
Okay, so now we're going to start looking at some questions. So one of the most common questions we get is about the huts. So this question, what are the huts like, especially the shared dorms, and is there electricity and water? I'm happy to cover this. I was on the TMB last year and I stayed in Refuge des Motets and Refuge de Lac Blanc. And yeah, the huts are a great experience. It's quite an integral part of the Tour du Mont Blanc, and even if you only stay there for one night, it's brilliant. There are some rules in the huts. These vary from hut to hut, but generally speaking, meals are communal, so you will be sat with fellow walkers, like in the picture you can see here. And this is a really fun thing, actually, because you can chat about your day on the trail, you can swap stories and get advice. You've also got, of course, shared dorms. Now, not all of you will be staying in dorms. It depends on your itinerary. The dorms, they can vary as well. So in the picture here, you can see a dorm room with quite modern layout, I would say, for a dorm, with bunk beds and your own individual mattress. But some huts do have very traditional basic dorms, and this is usually in the form of a long sleeping platform, and you're kind of lined up there. So if you are staying in dorms, I recommend taking earplugs if you're a light sleeper, because there's always at least one snorer. And as we've already covered, you'll need a sleeping bag liner because it's different, but some huts, they change the sheets every night, and some places you just get a big heavy blanket. And as Minna was saying, it's really nice to have something that's yours between yourself and that heavy blanket, because they don't get washed that regularly. Yeah, usually lights are out at 10 p.m., which might sound quite early just now, but once you get into the rhythm of walking all day, having a few beers with your dinner, and then passing out at 10 o'clock, you'll get used to it. And then people start to stir about 6 a.m. in the morning. Yes, so electricity, it is available, but you may have to wait your turn as sockets can be limited. If you're really concerned about having your phone fully charged every day, I recommend taking a small battery pack. They're really easy to pick up these days. That or keep your phone on airplane mode when you're in the huts to try and preserve the battery. What else to say about the huts?
Oh, they won't have Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah, no Wi-Fi. Yeah, this is important.
But hotels will, but
yeah.
the huts are mountain huts.
Exactly, and it's really nice actually to have a couple of nights where you just switch off completely and you can just focus on talking to the person you're sat next to over a nice beer, and just it's all part of the charm of the Tour du Mont Blanc. I mean, it was one of my favorite things about the Tour du Mont Blanc. It's probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I think everyone should experience it at one point in their life.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Perfect. And here's some of sort of the most asked questions. So I thought we'd run through these before answering some of your questions that you had. So stuff like, how's the cell phone coverage like on the trail? It varies. Some days it's pretty good, but some days it's a little bit sort of in and out. This is just because you are walking through the valleys and the signal can be sort of disrupted by the mountains around you. So it kind of makes sense, but you can always make your emergency calls. So that's always good.
Yeah, and I think there's a hut roughly every 7 or 8 kilometers in the Tour du Mont Blanc. So there'll always be a hut fairly nearby. So if something does go horribly awry, you can always call for help there, but I'm sure everything will be fine.
Yeah, so also how much money do you need? So I know I mentioned this earlier, I'd say probably about 30 euros a day. I guess this is also depending on how many beers you want to have in the mountain huts, how many cable cars you want to take. I mean, you might need a little bit more for the nights in Chamonix and Courmayeur where your dinners are included. But they have cash machines in both of those cities, or calling them cities. They're probably more like large towns, if even that. But they seem so big compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can probably, let's say 30 euros a day.
Just a FYI, a pint of beer is about 5 euros in a mountain hut. And generally, in the other accommodations as well, things tend to be a wee bit more expensive in the Alps than in other parts of France. So just keep that in mind.
It tastes so much better when you're there.
It's the best pint of your life when you arrive. If I don't want to walk one day, how do I get a transfer? So again, we direct you to your bad weather and alternative transport guide, which gives you options for each day with public transport. Some sections are much easier to skip with public transport than others. Some sections require quite a lengthy and expensive taxi transfer. So yeah, best to consult that. If you need any advice, give us a call. If you want a private transfer for the whole thing, give us a call again and we can organise that with Taxi Besson, who are our local bag transfer and transfer people, and they're really great. They do have a limited number of seats available with the bag transfer for bargain price, I think of about 30 euros, regardless of what the transfer is. But these are limited and they tend to keep them for people who are injured or not feeling very well. So just keep that in mind. It could be 30 euros or it could be more depending on their availability.
Also sort of drinking water, we don't recommend drinking water from the streams because you never quite know what's been upstream. All the huts you'll be able to get more water. All the villages will have places to purchase water, so you will be absolutely fine. We probably recommend bringing 1 to 2 liters on your walks, so you have stuff. And then, as Sarah was saying, you have huts that you walk past, and you'll be able to fill your bottles there as well, like if needed. But you should be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I would say at least 2 liters per person. And if it's a particularly hot or long day, either make sure you know that there's huts along the way, and your guidebook will be able to tell you this, or take some more water with you.
Ash, also, we'll come to your questions in a second. I was also just thinking, prepare each night before as well. Take out your maps, highlight the route you want to go, sort of have a think about, what your next day is going to look like. Because there's nothing worse than showing up and realizing, hey, I'm done at 12. I could have slept a little longer, or I slept too long, and I'm walking into the hut at 8 o'clock at night. So just prepare. Maybe bring a highlighter with. Bring a pen. Have it like, I think this is one of the things that I quite like about alpine trips is that you actually get to sit down in the evening with your walking partners and discuss what you're going to do the next day, depending on weather, conditions, how you're all feeling, because there are so many options on this trail as well. So yeah, I definitely want just going over your information and double checking you're walking to the right accommodation, you're walking on the right path. Yeah, sorry, my 2 cents.
And I'll just cover the question about food quickly. So yeah, what's the food like? Can I get food on the trail, or do I need to pick it up in advance? So all your dinners are included on all the itineraries, with the exception of overnights in Chamonix, Courmayeur, and Bourg-Saint-Maurice. These places have got plenty of restaurants that you can choose from, so there's no issues there. All other included dinners, they tend to be 3 courses, even in the huts, and this generally starts off with a soup. Your main course is usually some kind of meat with rice or pasta and a side of salad, and then your dessert is something sweet, or it can be a yogurt or a cheese, probably the freshest cheese you've ever had in your life from the dairy farm, which is down the road. I found the food great. And you know what it's like after a long day hiking, everything tastes amazing. But I was especially surprised at the food in the huts. For such remote locations, the food is really excellent, so I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. If you do have any dietary requirements, you've probably made us aware already, and we have told the accommodations, but it's always worth just to let them know when you check in, just to give them a wee reminder, because they're so busy with so many people coming and going. Yeah, they'll really appreciate the reminder. And in terms of lunch, you can, when you're staying in the larger towns like Chamonix, Courmayeur, even Les Contamines, you can pick up stuff for lunch from the local supermarket or bakery. In all other places, you can ask your accommodation to provide you with a packed lunch. Again, you should mention this when you check in to give them plenty of time to prepare it. This should be paid locally, and the price varies, but generally I would allow about €10 for a packed lunch. The price varies and the contents also vary quite significantly depending on the accommodation. But generally you'll get a sandwich with a piece of fruit, cereal or granola bar, chocolate bar, and a bottle of water.
Perfect. Now let's go to some questions that you guys had. So Margot, I'm going to answer your question. Do you need to book the cable car from Les Houches? No, you don't. You can get that when you arrive. So you just walk up to the cable car on the day and pay it there and then. Also, Margaret, I'm assuming this is another question from yourself. Are you able to stay in the huts? If you book them, yes.
Yeah, I think maybe that's in reference to some of the snow issues. So far, as far as we know, the huts are going to be open as normal, but we will keep you informed, and any changes will be on it, and we'll be in touch straight away. So we got a question from David. Do we need to carry our passport when crossing into another country? You don't need to. There are no official borders on the Tour du Mont Blanc, no border crossings, I should say. But I usually keep my passport on me anyway. As we were saying before, we never have any issues with our bag transfer, but just in the worst case scenario that something happened to your bag, it's good to have your passport on you. So I recommend carrying it, but that's just more a personal thing. It's completely up to you.
And then Robert, can we find water during the day at refreshment places? So yes, so you are walking past different huts. We always recommend packing enough water that you think you'll need for the day and not relying on sort of picking up water as you go. But, if in need, yes, there will be places to pick up water as well.
And we have a question from Julie asking about the cost of cable cars. So depending on your itinerary, you'll be taking cable cars on a couple of the days. Now, I don't know this off the top of my head, but I believe for the first cable car on the first day that we recommend you take, I want to say it's about €15 per person.
Yeah, I think it's right.
Yeah, and then the cable cars towards the end of the itinerary from Chamonix up to Le Flégère and from Plan Praz down to Chamonix, it's about €20. But in your information pack, we have links to the cable car timetables. So if you click on them, you'll be able to find the most up-to-date prices as well.
And usually with the cable cars, you can pay via card. I mean, it's always good to have cash, but they actually do accept card as well. So just, if you are in a pinch, you're not stuck on the mountain and they won't take you. If you have your card, you'll be fine. We have some more questions coming. Just bear with us. We have to write as fast as possible. Okay. So I feel like I should actually just read this out loud. Hi, Raina. So your question is, if an unforeseen medical incident happens before the trip and you need to cancel, can part of the booking be carried forward to the next year? It really depends. Have a look at our booking conditions. It depends when you cancel your trip. I do recommend getting travel insurance for exactly this reason. If you do have any sort of specific questions, though, if what's ever happening in your case, contact your DNA, because we're more than happy to help and we are very understanding. So yeah, just ask your DNA, your sales specialist, and get travel insurance.
Yeah. Waiting for some more questions.
I think there's just too many. It's great though. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so Cherie, advice for US cell phone usage, do we need SIM cards? Yeah, this is a good question. If you're coming from the US, the first thing I would do is check with your cell phone provider that your phone works in Europe, because I think there's some phones that don't and they work in Europe and vice versa. So basically see what they say. If it works and you can freely put in different SIMs, then you can definitely pick up a SIM in Chamonix. These are really cheap these days, like a couple of euros, and you can get them usually in supermarkets now at the checkout. So yeah, it's probably a good thing to have, but first place to check is with your cell phone provider and just make sure everything's working. Yeah,
I mean, most of the hotels do have Wi-Fi, so if you have to, because nowadays with WhatsApp and Facebook and all these other lovely tools, you will be able to get in touch with your loved ones at home. So it probably just depends. Also for Sherry, with adapters, so in France you have the standard two-prong, kind of the round ones. As far as I know, that's the standard. Yes, that works also in Italy and Switzerland. Yeah. Switzerland sometimes has a weird 3-1, but if you get like your standard kind of travel adapting, or go to your travel shop and get a European adapter, and that will work just fine. Okay, so a question from Julie or Jody. How much cooler are the temperatures along the trail than in town, where we start the day? Yeah, it's a really good question. Obviously, the higher up you are, the cooler it's going to be. I couldn't tell you exactly how much cooler. That varies from day to day. I wish we could. I know, that'd be great. That would solve a lot of our problems. But the best thing to do is to check the weather forecast each day. And the link that I gave that's on this presentation actually gives you temperature at various different altitudes. So the website is called mountainforecast.com, and all you have to do is search for Mont Blanc, and then it gives you a list of the temperature basically at various different altitudes. And the altitude that concerns us mostly is between 1,000 and 2,500 meters. So it'll be able to tell you exactly the temperature for that day. And your accommodations will be able to help you as well. But it is important to remember that it will be cooler the higher up you go than in the valleys. So even though it must seem like a glorious day in Chamonix, take a warm layer with you and a waterproof layer with you when you go up into the mountains. Perfect. Well, I think this is us slowly coming to an end. I hope this has been really helpful. I'm on call, Rachel's around, Jess around, anyone you've been speaking to. We're happy to help sort of answer any more questions you have, especially if they're sort of more detailed to your trip. Because I know that each of you have, an individual adventure, and we're happy to help with any questions. Yeah, and for those of you who are departing in about 2 weeks' time, thank you so much for your patience while you're waiting for additional information about all the changes. I'm sure you can understand the nature of the situation and the weather. We're just not wanting to give out information too early in case that changes quite drastically.
But as I said, we'll be finishing all the documentation for the first couple of weeks' departures next week, and we'll be in touch with everybody individually and letting you know exactly how your itinerary is going to be affected. So yeah, please be rest assured that we're doing our best to make sure you have an enjoyable and safe time on the TMB. It's a fantastic trip, so hope you enjoy.
Yeah, hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.